I want to tell you a story about a woman named Sarah. She's sitting in her kitchen one Sunday morning, coffee in hand, sunlight coming through the blinds, and her husband says something completely innocent. But in an instant, she's not in that kitchen anymore. She's back in the fight they had 6 years ago, the one where the words cut so deep they left invisible scars. Her heart races, her voice tightens, and she blurts out, this is just like that time you could feel the air in the room change. Now, here's the thing. Sarah is not broken. Her husband is not the villain. They are two good people standing in the present, but arguing with ghosts from the past. And if you've ever found yourself bringing up an old wound during a brand new disagreement, you know that feeling. The past rushes in uninvited and hijacks the moment. I've been there. Maybe you have too. See, we tell ourselves, I'm just making a point. But the truth, we're not fighting for clarity. We're fighting for acknowledgement of a hurt that never fully healed. And when we bring up past issues, especially in moments of conflict, we're not just stacking more wood on the fire, we're tossing gasoline on it. The human heart doesn't operate on a delete button. Pain has a memory. It stores itself in stories we tell about ourselves, about the people we love, about our worth. And when those stories go unspoken, they fester. But here's the paradox. Pretending the past didn't happen doesn't heal us, yet living in the past keeps us from building the future. So why do we do it? Why do smart, loving, well-intentioned people keep dragging yesterday in today? The answer I've found is both simpler and more human than we think, because we want to feel safe again, because we want someone to understand how deeply we were hurt, because we mistake resolution for repetition. But safety doesn't come from reliving the story. It comes from rewriting it. Tonight, we're going to talk about that delicate line between honoring your past and being imprisoned by it. And we're going to talk about courage, the kind of courage it takes to look at someone you love and say, I choose to heal more than I choose to win. Because bringing up the past isn't always a weapon. Sometimes it's a cry for connection. The difference between the two, that's what we're about to explore. When we bring up the past in a conversation, it's almost never just about the facts of what happened. It's about the feeling that's still sitting there, unacknowledged, waiting to be understood. The emotional need behind the past is the heartbeat of the story we keep retelling. And here's the truth most people miss until that emotional need is met. Whether it's to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel valued, we will keep replaying the same moment over and over, like a song stuck on repeat. Think about the last time someone brought up something you thought was old news. Maybe it was your partner reminding you about that time you forgot their birthday years ago, or a friend bringing up a joke you made that they said hurt them. You might have thought, why are we talking about this again? That was ages ago. But for them, the emotional need wasn't met back then. It wasn't about the date on the calendar. It was about the feeling of being overlooked. Until that need is seen, the wound stays open. It's the same reason a child will keep tugging at your sleeve if you don't answer them the first time. They don't stop needing connection just because you didn't look up. Adults aren't that different. We just get better at disguising the tug. When someone brings up the past, often they're not trying to punish you. They're trying to get you to notice where they're still bleeding. I remember a man telling me about an argument with his brother. The brother kept bringing up a fight from when they were teenagers, something small about borrowing a bike without asking. The man couldn't understand why it mattered so much. But when they really talked, it came out that the bike wasn't the issue at all. The real hurt was that he'd felt invisible his whole childhood, and the bike was just one of many moments that reinforced that. The emotional need was never about the bike. It was about being seen. Once that was understood, the conversation changed completely. In relationships, unmet emotional needs often wear disguises. A wife says, "You never listen to me," and the husband hears criticism. But underneath those words might be the need for reassurance that she matters. A friend says, "You didn't call me back." And we might think they're being petty, but maybe the real need is to feel important in your life. Until we train ourselves to look past the surface complaint and listen for the need, we'll keep arguing about the wrong thing. Daily life is full of these examples. A coworker snaps at you for not responding to their email right away. You could react to their tone. But if you dig deeper, maybe their emotional need is to feel respected in their role. A teenager slams their bedroom door after you ask about their grades. It looks like defiance, but maybe the emotional need is for understanding that they're already feeling pressure and don't want to disappoint you. When we focus only on the behavior, we miss the human need driving it. Sometimes the emotional need is for closure. Imagine you had an argument years ago where you apologized quickly just to end it, but the other person didn't feel truly heard. The apology may have satisfied the logic of the moment, but not the emotion. They needed to know you understood the depth of their hurt. Without that, the wound stays open and the past stays alive. Other times, the emotional need is for safety. A man who grew up in a volatile home might react strongly when his partner raises their voice. To the partner, it's just a slightly louder tone. To him, it's the sound of danger. His emotional need isn't to win the argument, it's to feel secure. When that need isn't acknowledged, he will bring up the past again and again because the fear feels current, even if the event was years ago. The tricky part is that people rarely say what the emotional need actually is. We don't walk into a fight saying, "I need to feel respected right now," or "I need to feel like I matter to you." Instead, we say, "You never," or "You always," and those words send the other person into defense mode, which pushes the emotional need even further from being met. That's why recognizing it requires empathy, stepping back from the sting of the words and asking, what are they really asking for? I've seen this play out in workplaces, families, marriages, and friendships. A boss criticizes an employee's work and thinks they're just giving feedback, but the employee hears, "You're not good enough." The need here might be reassurance of their competence, not a breakdown of their mistakes. A sibling keeps bringing up how you forgot to visit them last year. On the surface, it's about a missed trip. Underneath, it's about their need to feel like a priority in your life. When you meet the need, the past finally starts to lose its grip. If we can learn to hear the need behind the words, we can change the entire trajectory of a conversation. The next time someone drags the past into the present, instead of saying, "That was a long time ago, get over it," imagine saying, "Help me understand what you needed back then that you didn't get." That single question can shift the ground beneath both of you. Because when emotional needs are met, when people feel heard, valued, safe, and important, the past doesn't need to be brought up anymore. It has finally been laid to rest, not because time passed, but because healing happened. One of the most powerful shifts we can make in any relationship, whether it's with a partner, a family member, a friend, or even ourselves, is learning to separate someone's past behavior from their current identity. The truth is, we are not frozen in the worst thing we've ever done. Yet so many relationships suffer because people keep treating each other like they are still that old version. The mind loves patterns. It loves to predict. If you hurt me before, my mind will assume you'll hurt me again. But that assumption robs both of us of the chance to grow. Think about it. If you've ever made a big mistake, you know the ache of wanting people to see that you've changed. Maybe you were careless with your words years ago and it caused pain. Since then, you've learned to communicate better. You've owned up to your past and you've tried to do better. But when someone keeps bringing it up as proof of who you still are, it feels like carrying a weight you can't put down. You're living in the present, but they keep holding you in the past. I remember talking to a couple who had been married for over 20 years. Early in their marriage, the husband had made a selfish financial decision that caused them a lot of stress. He owned it, apologized, and spent years being more responsible. But every time they faced a money decision, his wife would bring up that old incident. He told me, no matter what I do now, she still sees me as the man who made that one bad choice. What she didn't realize was that holding him in that old identity was poisoning their present trust. Yes, the mistake happened, but he was no longer the same man who made it. We do this with parents too. Maybe your father wasn't emotionally available when you were a child. Now, years later, he's trying to show up, but you can't shake the belief that he's still distant. You interpret every pause in conversation, every moment of distraction, as proof he hasn't changed. But what if he has? What if the man in front of you is not the same man from your childhood? When we fail to separate past behavior from present identity, we miss the opportunity to experience who someone has become. It happens in friendships all the time. A friend once let you down when you needed them most. Now, even when they show up, you hold back your trust, waiting for them to fail again. The friendship starts to wither, not because they're unreliable now, but because you can't stop seeing them through the lens of the past. This is how we imprison people in versions of themselves they've outgrown. And here's the hard truth. We also do this to ourselves. We look in the mirror and still see the person who made mistakes, failed, or fell short years ago. We tell ourselves, I'm just not good at relationships, or I'll always mess things up, because we haven't forgiven ourselves for our own past behavior. We keep wearing an identity that no longer fits. That's like judging the person you are today by the clothes you wore in high school. It's outdated, uncomfortable, and it doesn't tell the whole story. In daily life, separating past behavior from current identity means we have to actively choose to see the person in front of us instead of the person from the old story. Imagine your teenager once lied to you about something big. You had a long talk, set boundaries, and worked on rebuilding trust. Now, months later, they're telling you the truth about something difficult, but you respond with suspicion because of the old lie. What's the message? No matter what you do now, I'll still see you as a liar. That kind of message doesn't inspire better behavior. It convinces people that changing won't matter. Or picture a workplace scenario: an employee once missed an important deadline. Since then, they've been on time every single time. But the boss keeps making little comments like, let's hope this one doesn't slip through the cracks. Instead of acknowledging the growth, the boss keeps the employee in the shadow of that mistake. The result, the employee feels undervalued and the trust in the relationship erodes. Separating past behavior from identity doesn't mean ignoring the past. It means acknowledging it while also leaving room for evolution. If someone betrayed your trust once, you don't have to forget it happened, but you can notice the ways they've shown up differently since. You can decide to let their consistent present actions redefine who they are in your eyes. That's not naivety, that's courage. The reverse is also true. If we refuse to separate behavior from identity, we risk reinforcing the very patterns we're trying to avoid. When people feel permanently labeled, they stop trying to change. It's like telling someone you're selfish instead of that thing you did was selfish. The first statement locks their character in stone. The second calls out a behavior that can be changed. One gives room for growth. The other kills it. I've seen people cry just from hearing the words, I can see how much you've changed. Why? Because it's rare. It's rare for someone to notice your growth instead of your mistakes. It's rare for someone to believe you're more than the worst thing you've done. But when we give people that gift, when we separate their past behavior from their current identity, we don't just heal relationships. We open doors for transformation that might never have happened otherwise. This shift requires presence. It requires looking at someone and asking, who are they today? Instead of automatically assuming they're still the person who hurt us. It means listening with curiosity instead of judgment, paying attention to the evidence of growth instead of only looking for signs of failure. And when we do that, we create space for grace, and grace is where the real change takes root. When a disagreement rises up, most people's instinct is to defend, explain, or prove. The problem is, the moment we start with accusation, the other person's ears shut and their armor goes up. But when we start with curiosity, something entirely different happens. We open a door instead of building a wall. Curiosity says, I want to understand you. Accusation says, I've already judged you. And no one ever walked into healing through a closed door. The way we phrase the very first sentence of a conversation often decides how it will end. Imagine you come home and say to your partner, you never listen to me. That's an accusation. It pins them to the wall, and their natural reaction will be to push back, to defend, or to throw your words right back at you. But what if instead you said, when I was talking earlier, I felt like my words didn't land. Can you tell me what you were hearing? Suddenly, you've shifted from attack to exploration. Now, instead of being forced into a courtroom, they've been invited into a conversation. Curiosity takes humility. It means admitting that maybe, just maybe, you don't have the full picture yet. Let's say your friend cancels on you for the third time in a row. Accusation sounds like, you clearly don't care about this friendship. Curiosity sounds like, I've noticed we haven't been able to connect lately. Is something going on for you? In the first version, you've already decided they don't care. In the second, you've made space for their truth to emerge. It's not about sugarcoating real feelings. Curiosity doesn't mean you don't feel hurt, frustrated, or disappointed. It means you bring those feelings in a way that allows for understanding instead of immediate conflict. For example, a parent might say to their teenage daughter, you're being disrespectful. That label shuts her down. But if the parent says, I'm hearing a lot of sharpness in your tone, what's behind that? They're showing interest in the root cause, not just reacting to the symptom. In workplaces, the difference between curiosity and accusation can mean the difference between a thriving team and a toxic one. A manager might be tempted to say, you dropped the ball on this project again. That's an accusation that focuses on failure. A curiosity-driven approach might be, I noticed the deadline got missed. Can you walk me through what happened on your end? That opens the possibility that there were obstacles you didn't know about. And it keeps the door open for problem solving rather than blame. One of the most powerful aspects of curiosity is that it disarms defensiveness. I remember talking with a couple in counseling where the wife felt her husband didn't help enough around the house. Her usual approach was to say, you never lift a finger unless I ask you 10 times. His usual reaction, he'd list all the things he had done, and the fight would spiral. We reframed her words into curiosity. I'm feeling really overwhelmed with the housework. How do you see our roles in keeping things running? That shift led to one of the first calm conversations they'd had in months. Daily life gives us dozens of small moments to practice this. The driver who cuts you off, accusation says, what a jerk. Curiosity says, maybe they're rushing to a hospital or late for something important. The coworker who seems cold in the morning, accusation says, they're ignoring me. Curiosity says, I wonder if they're going through something today. We can't always know the real reason, but training our minds to ask before we assume changes how we show up. When you lead with accusation, you're starting the conversation on the foundation of mistrust. When you lead with curiosity, you're starting on the foundation of possibility. The difference is night and day. Think about a friend who's been distant. If you open with, you've been avoiding me, they might feel attacked and retreat further. If you open with, I've missed you lately. What's been going on in your world? You've left room for them to share without shame. Curiosity is especially powerful when old wounds are involved. In arguments where the past comes up, it's tempting to say, here we go again. You're just holding on to this to hurt me. That's an accusation that shuts the conversation down. But if you can say, I can see this is still really important to you. Can you help me understand what's underneath it? You shift from battle stance to bridge building. Sometimes just that question is enough to soften the other person's heart. This doesn't mean you have to accept bad behavior. Curiosity isn't an excuse for letting someone cross your boundaries. It's simply a way of gathering the truth before you decide how to respond. You can still set limits. You can still express your hurt, but you do it from a place of knowledge rather than assumption. And that alone makes your words more likely to be heard. I've seen this save relationships that were hanging by a thread. A brother and sister who hadn't spoken in years finally reconnected because instead of accusing her brother of never caring about family, the sister asked, "What was going on for you during those years we didn't talk?" His answer surprised her. It wasn't that he didn't care. He had been battling depression and didn't know how to reach out. That single question turned years of resentment into understanding. When we communicate with curiosity, we take ourselves out of the role of judge and step into the role of learner. We stop assuming the worst and start allowing for complexity. And in that space, even the hardest conversations can become places of connection instead of conflict. In every heated conversation, there comes a moment, sometimes so quick you can almost miss it, where you have to decide what matters more, proving you're right or protecting the relationship. It's the crossroads between winning the moment and winning the long game. Choosing healing over scoring points is not about letting someone walk all over you. It's about seeing the bigger picture, about asking yourself, do I want to win this argument or do I want us to win together? Because here's the truth, when you choose points over peace, you might get the satisfaction of a victory today, but you risk planting seeds of bitterness that will grow into tomorrow's distance. Think about the last time you had a disagreement with someone you love. Maybe you had the perfect comeback, the kind of line that would shut them down and leave you feeling like you won. But then what? The win feels good for a moment, but it costs trust, safety, and closeness. You walk away with your pride intact, but your connection wounded. Healing asks for something harder. Healing means letting go of the scoreboard and focusing on what will actually bring you closer. I remember hearing about two sisters who'd always been close until a misunderstanding about money tore them apart. In a phone conversation, one sister had the chance to throw the other's hypocrisy back in her face. She told me later, I could have destroyed her with one sentence. But she didn't. Instead, she said, I think there's more pain here than we're talking about. Can we start over? That choice didn't make her weak. It made her strong enough to value the relationship over the rush of being right. Months later, they rebuilt their bond because one of them chose healing over a point on the scoreboard. This happens in marriages all the time. A husband forgets to pick up something from the store and his wife, tired and frustrated, has the perfect list of past times he's dropped the ball. She could unload it all and walk away feeling justified, but she stops herself and asks, will this make him feel understood or attacked? That pause changes everything. Instead of stacking up proof against him, she talks about how stressed she's been and asks for more help. Instead of a fight, they end up with a plan. She didn't win the argument, but they both won the moment. Daily life gives us dozens of moments to choose healing over points. Your coworker forgets to credit you in a meeting. You could humiliate them publicly to make your value clear, but you choose instead to pull them aside and say, I felt left out when my work wasn't mentioned. Can we make sure we both get recognized next time? You could score a point by embarrassing them, but you choose to heal by preserving the working relationship. Parents face this choice constantly. A child talks back and you can hit them with the sharpest words, the kind that shut them up instantly. But if you're thinking long term, you realize your goal isn't to win the conversation. It's to keep the lines of communication open for years to come. Instead of, don't you dare talk to me like that, you might say, it sounds like you're really upset. Tell me what's going on. That choice doesn't erase boundaries, it builds trust. The temptation to score points is often strongest when old wounds are involved. In the heat of an argument, The perfect weaponized memory pops into your mind, something from years ago that proves your point right now. But throwing it into the fight rarely brings healing. It's like pouring salt into a cut. Even if you're factually correct, the emotional damage lasts far longer than the satisfaction of winning. Choosing healing means leaving that weapon on the table, even when it's right there within reach. Sometimes the need to score points comes from fear that if you don't win this time, your needs won't be met. But here's the irony: people are far more likely to meet your needs when they feel safe with you. Healing builds safety. Safety builds trust. Trust builds the willingness to meet each other's needs. That's a much more sustainable victory than being able to say, I told you so. One of the hardest examples I've seen was a father and son who hadn't spoken in years. When they finally sat down together, the father could have listed every reason why the son was ungrateful, every mistake he'd made. Instead, he said, I've missed you. I know we've both done things we regret. I'm here to understand, not to prove anything. That single choice dismantled years of resentment. He could have won the argument that day, but instead he won back his son's heart. Choosing healing over scoring points is a daily practice. It's in the moment when your partner misremembers a detail and you decide not to correct them just to prove you're right. It's in the moment when a friend says something clumsy and you choose to hear the intention instead of pouncing on the mistake. It's in the moment when a sibling brings up an old fight and you respond with, I want to understand why this still hurts, instead of, well, you were wrong back then too. It's easy to win a battle. It's harder and infinitely more meaningful to win back trust, connection, and love. That's why the choice for healing is so powerful. It's not about giving up your truth. It's about delivering your truth in a way that builds instead of breaks. It's about asking yourself, when this conversation is over, will they feel more connected to me or more guarded? And when you choose connection, you've already won something far greater than a point on a scoreboard. When the past has left deep marks in a relationship, one of the most powerful ways to move forward is to create new stories together. Moments, memories, and experiences that are stronger than the shadows of what came before. Painful history has a way of replaying itself on a loop. And the only way to change that reel is to give the relationship new footage. You can't rewrite what happened, but you can write what happens next. And when you do it together, you shift from being characters trapped in an old chapter to co-authors of a new one. Think about a couple who went through a season of mistrust. Maybe one partner broke a promise, and that memory still lingers like a fog over every conversation. If they only focus on dissecting that moment, they stay stuck in it. But if they decide to build new moments, planning trips together, starting small traditions, showing up consistently for each other, they begin to layer over the old story. It's not about pretending the wound never happened. It's about building enough trust in the present that the past no longer has the loudest voice. In friendships, new stories are just as powerful. Imagine two friends who drifted apart after a painful misunderstanding. Every time they talk, the memory of that hurt is sitting between them, unspoken but heavy. One day, instead of avoiding each other or rehashing the old fight, they decide to try something new, maybe taking a trip together, volunteering for a cause they both care about, or even starting a small side project. Each new shared moment becomes a brick in the bridge they're rebuilding. Daily life offers countless opportunities to create these new stories, but it requires intentionality. A parent who missed a lot of their child's early years can't undo the absence, but they can start being present now, in the phone calls, in the school events, in the shared meals, in the late night conversations that happen when you're really listening. Over time, those new memories begin to outweigh the old ones, not by erasing them, but by making them part of a bigger, richer picture. Sometimes creating new stories means rewriting the patterns of how you spend time together. If a marriage has been dominated by conflict, intentionally making space for joy is crucial. That might mean setting aside one evening a week where the only goal is to have fun, no problem solving, No serious conversations, just laughter, games, and connection. Those nights become the proof that the relationship is capable of lightness again. In a workplace, teams that have been through a period of tension or mistrust can also benefit from this. Maybe there was a failed project that left everyone pointing fingers. Instead of endlessly revisiting what went wrong, a good leader will create new successes to focus on, small wins that remind the team they can work well together. Each win becomes a new chapter in the story of who they are as a team. Creating new stories doesn't mean ignoring the old ones. In fact, it's often about acknowledging them openly and then asking, so what do we want to write next? That question changes the energy from blame to possibility. It shifts people from being stuck in, this is who we are, to this is who we can become. I've seen couples who have been on the brink of breaking up transform their connection simply by building new rituals. One couple started ending every day by sharing one thing they appreciated about each other. At first, it felt awkward, especially because they were used to ending days with silence or arguments. But over time, those tiny exchanges became the new soundtrack of their relationship. Years later, they still talk about how that simple ritual was the turning point. Family relationships can also be rewritten through shared projects. Siblings who spent years competing or arguing can create a new story by working toward a common goal, maybe renovating their parents' old house together or organizing a family reunion. Suddenly, their energy shifts from against each other to alongside each other. That shift is powerful because it proves they're capable of building something together instead of just reliving old rivalries. Even with ourselves, we can create new stories. If you've carried shame from past mistakes, you can intentionally fill your present with choices that align with the person you want to be now. Volunteer for a cause you care about. Learn a skill you've always wanted to master. Surround yourself with people who see your potential. Every action you take becomes a sentence in the new chapter of your life. The key is consistency. One joyful day won't erase years of struggle, but a pattern of positive experiences will start to change how the story feels. When someone remembers your relationship, you want them to recall not just the pain, but the countless moments of laughter, connection, and growth that followed. Those new memories become a living reminder that the past doesn't have to define the future. When we create new stories together, we take back the pen. We stop letting the hardest chapters dictate the ending, and we start building something worth remembering, not because it's perfect, but because it's real, intentional, and written side by side. When we stand at the edge of our relationships, holding the weight of years, carrying the echoes of arguments, betrayals, misunderstandings, and disappointments, we face a choice that is both terrifying and liberating. We can let the past define the rest of our story, or we can dare to write a new one. The truth is, bringing up past issues is not always about what was said or done. It's about the fear that it will happen again. It's about the invisible scars we carry and the need for reassurance that they still matter to the person standing across from us. But here's the thing. Wounds don't heal by being scratched open over and over. They heal when we tend to them, when we honor them, when we allow new light to touch them. I want you to remember this. Your past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. You are not condemned to live in yesterday's mistakes. You are not chained to the worst version of yourself or of each other. You are human, flawed, capable of both breaking and mending, hurting and healing. Every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. That's not just a poetic line. It's a truth that has saved more relationships than we will ever know. Some of you are holding on to anger like it's a shield, believing that if you let it go, you'll be vulnerable again. But love without vulnerability isn't love at all. It's a transaction, and transactions don't heal hearts. You want to see transformation? Then dare to lay down the sword and open your hands. You don't have to have it all figured out to move forward. Sometimes you just have to take the first step toward trust again. Every time you choose to listen instead of attack, every time you choose to understand instead of assume, every time you choose to ask, what do we need to do to make it better? Instead of, how could you? you are rewriting the ending. You are proving that love is not about keeping score. It's about keeping the connection alive. Because at the end of the day, no one wins when you win the argument, but lose the person. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of courage is not confronting the other person, but confronting yourself, looking at your own role in the story and saying, I can do better. I will do better. I will be the change I want to see here. Remember, be the person you needed when you were hurting. When you do that, you not only shift the relationship, you shift your own soul. I have seen people rebuild from the ashes of infidelity, addiction, betrayal, and years of silence. I've seen laughter return to homes where it had been absent for decades. I've seen friendships thought long dead bloom again because one person decided to say, I miss you. Let's try again. The miracle isn't that they forgot the past. It's that they built something so meaningful in the present that the past lost its power. So if you are listening to this and thinking of the person you've been avoiding or the relationship that has been limping along in cold silence, hear me now. It is not too late. It is never too late to choose love over ego, understanding over accusation, healing over history. Fall 7 times and stand up 8. That's not just a proverb. It's a blueprint for every relationship worth saving. One day you will look back on this season and the question will be, did I fight to be right or did I fight to be kind? Did I let the past chain me or did I use it as a stepping stone? And the beauty is you get to decide that answer right now. So close your eyes for a moment. Picture the person you've been holding at arm's length. Imagine the conversations you could have, the peace you could feel, the connection you could rebuild if only you dared to take the first step and then hear this truth ringing in your soul. The past is not your prison. It's your teacher. Learn from it. Don't live in it. Because in the end, the most powerful stories aren't about people who never fell. They're about people who fell hard and still chose to rise together. And when your final chapter is written, let it be said of you, they loved deeply, they forgave freely, they lived courageously, they turned wounds into wisdom and pain into purpose. And they never let the weight of yesterday crush the possibility of tomorrow.